The Last Judgment.
If the Hebrew people were dominated by the Persians and the Greeks, it was because of their lack of faith. Consequently, the Elohim punished the Hebrews by sending some of their angels amongst the Persians and Greeks to help those nations progress technologically. This explains the great moments in the history of those two civilizations. The Archangel Michael was the leader of the delegation, which was helping the Persians. Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help the kingdom of Persia. Daniel 10 verse 13. In chapter 12 of Daniel, the resurrection is again mentioned. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Daniel 12 verse 2. The Last Judgment will enable great individuals to live again. Those people who have acted positively for humanity and who have truly believed in their creators and followed their commandments will be welcomed with great joy by the people of the era when this will happen. On the other hand, all the wicked people will feel shame before their judges and will live in eternal regret as an example for the rest of humanity. The wise leaders shall shine like the bright vault of heaven, and those who have guided the people on the true path shall be like the stars for ever and ever. Daniel 12 verse 3. The geniuses will be the most highly esteemed and the most highly rewarded. Those just individuals who allowed the geniuses to blossom or the truth to triumph will also be rewarded. But you, Daniel, keep the words secret and seal the book till the time of the end. Many will seek here and there, and knowledge shall be increased. Daniel 12 verse 4. These words will only be understood when humanity has reached a sufficient level of scientific understanding. That is to say, now. All this will happen when the power of the holy people ceases to be dispersed. Daniel 12 verse 7. This will be when the people of Israel recover their land after their long diaspora. The state of Israel was created a few decades ago, at the same time as the explosion of humanity's scientific knowledge. Go your way, Daniel, for the words are kept secret and sealed till the time of the end. Daniel 12 verse 9. All this could not be understood at the time. Now it can all be understood. In recent years, scientific progress and the beginning of space exploration by human beings have been such that everything seems possible for humanity. Nothing now surprises people, for they are used to seeing many wonders happening before their eyes on television. They can learn without astonishment that they really are made in the image of God, their almighty creator. And even as far as their scientific abilities are concerned, these days miracles have become comprehensible. In Jonah, the big fish that swallows the prophet is very interesting indeed. Jonah was thrown into the water from a small boat. Now Yahweh had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly for 3 days and 3 nights. Jonah 1 verse 17. The great fish was in fact a submarine, as you know such vessels now. But for the people of that time, it could only be a great fish, even though the gastric juices of such a fish would have digested a man quickly without any hope of his returning to the open air. What is more, Jonah would have needed air to breathe. In the submarine, the creators were able to carry on a conversation with Jonah to learn about the political developments of those times. And Yahweh spoke unto the fish, and it vomited out Jonah upon the dry land. Jonah 2 verse 10. The submarine came close to the shore, and Jonah was back on land. In Zechariah chapter 5 there is another description of a flying machine. I looked up again and saw a flying scroll, 20 cubits, 9 meters long, and 10 cubits, 4.5 meters wide. Zechariah 5 verses 1 through 2. A little further on, women amongst the creators appear for the first time. Behold, there came out 2 women, and the wind was in their wings like the wings of a stork. Zechariah 5 verse 9. These 2 female companions were accompanying the creators, and both were equipped with autonomous flying suits when they appeared before Zechariah. In Psalms 8 verse 5, it is said of human beings, Thou hast made them a little less than the Elohim. Human beings are virtually as strong intellectually as their creators. Those who copied out the text did not dare write equal to the Elohim as it had been originally dictated. His rising is at one end of the heavens, and his circuit touches their farthest ends. Psalms 19 verse 6. The creators came from a planet very far away from the Earth's orbit. In the heavens he has pitched a tent for the sun. Psalms 19 verse 4. Here is another allusion to the mass of earth which was created to form the original continent when the oceans covered the earth. Yahweh looks out from heaven and watches all mankind. He surveys from his dwelling place all the inhabitants of earth. Psalms 33 verse 13 through 14. The creators watch humanity's behavior as they have always done from their flying vessels.
Satan.
In the book of Job, chapter 1, you have the explanation of Satan. Now there was a day when the sons of Elohim came to present themselves before Yahweh, and Satan also came with them. Job 1 verse 6. Elohim, in Hebrew, literally means those who come from the sky. The sons of Elohim, in other words, the creators who watch human beings, report regularly to their planet of origin, indicating for the most part that human beings venerate and love the Elohim. But one of these Elohim, called Satan, was part of a group which had always condemned the creation of other intelligent beings on a planet as close as the earth, seeing them as a possible threat. That is why, on seeing Job's devotion, which was one of the best examples of human beings loving their creators, he said, "Has not Job good reason to fear Elohim? But stretch out your hand and strike all that he has, and then he will curse you to your face." And Yahweh said to Satan, "So be it. All that he has is in your hands. Only Job himself you must not touch." Job 1 verse 9 through 12. Hearing Satan's assertion that had Job not been rich, he would not have loved his creators, the government gave full power to Satan to ruin Job. It would then be seen if he still venerated his creators, and that is why killing him was forbidden. On seeing Job's dedication to respecting his creators, even when he was ruined, the government triumphed over the opposition, Satan. But Satan retorted that though Job had lost many things, he was still in good health. So the government gave Satan carte blanche so long as he did not kill Job. He is in your hands, but save his life. Job 2 verse 6. Again, in the book of Job, a small sentence in chapter 37 is very interesting. Can you beat out the vaults of the skies as he does, as hard as a mirror of cast metal? Job 37 verse 18. In other words, are human beings capable of making vaults of the skies? In reality, flying metallic vessels. People of that time thought it was possible for no one but God, and yet today it can be done. Finally, in view of Job's humility, the creators healed him and gave him back his wealth, his children, and his health.
Humans could not understand.
In the book of Tobit, in the Apocrypha, one of the creator's robots named Rael also came to test humanity's reaction towards their creators. Once he had accomplished his mission, he left, after proving who he was. "Every day I appeared unto you, but neither did I eat nor drink. I am ascending to him who sent me. Write down these things that have happened to you." Tobit 12, verse 19 through 20. All of this is easy to see in the writings, but once again you must try to understand. "I shall tell you what wisdom is, and what is her origin, and I will not hide from you the mysteries of Elohim, but will reveal from the beginning of her birth, and bring the knowledge of her light, and will not pass over the truth." Wisdom of Solomon 6, verse 22. When the time comes, wisdom, the science, which allowed all this to happen, will be understood by humanity. The biblical writings will be proof of all this. For the greatness and beauty of created things give us a corresponding idea of their creators. Wisdom of Solomon 13, verse 5. So it is simple to see the truth, recognizing the creators by observing their creations. And who by these good things that are seen could not understand him that is? Wisdom of Solomon 13, verse 1. To avoid being disturbed by humans, the creators built their bases on high mountains, where we now find traces of great civilizations, in the Himalayas and Peru, for example, as well as at the bottom of the sea. Gradually, the mountain stations were abandoned in favor of submarine bases, less accessible to humans. The creators who had been banished at the outset had hidden themselves in the oceans. In that day, Yahweh with his cruel and mighty sword shall punish Leviathan, that runaway serpent, and he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. Isaiah 27 verse 1. At that time the government of their planet wanted to destroy those who had created the humans. It was not easy to see clearly among all those wonders. So of course the creators were deified and made into something abstract, because human beings were unable to understand scientific facts. And the book is delivered to him that is not learned, saying, "Read this, I pray thee." But he said, "I am not learned." Isaiah 29 verse 12. For a long time, humanity has held the truth in its hands, but could not understand until it was sufficiently evolved scientifically to decode it. Every man is brutish in his lack of knowledge. Jeremiah 10 verse 14. Science enabled the creators to create, and will enable human beings to do the same. Yahweh possessed me in the beginning of his way, before his work of old. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was. When he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he gave to the sea his decree that the waters should pass his commandments, then I was with him, as one brought up with him, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him, rejoicing in the inhabitable parts of his earth, and my delights were with the sons of men. Proverbs 8, verses 22 through 23, 27, 29 to 31. Intelligence and science, these are the two virtues that enable the creators to create the landmass, the single continent, and the living beings they placed upon it. And now this intelligence and this spirit leads the human brain to repeat this act of their creators. Since the beginning of time it has been so. People create other people like themselves on other planets. The cycle continues, some die, others take over. We are your creators, and you will create other humanities. That which has been is now, and that which is to be already has been. Ecclesiastes 3, verse 15. The animals were also created, and will be recreated, just like human beings, no more, no less. The species that disappear will live again when you know how to recreate them. Yea, they all have one breath, so that man has no preeminence above the beast, for all is vanity. Ecclesiastes 3, verse 19. We, the creators, will only show ourselves officially if humanity is grateful to us for having created them. We fear that human beings might hold a grudge against us, which we cannot accept. We would like to begin making open contact with you and give you the benefit of our considerable advance in scientific knowledge, so long as we could be sure that you would not turn against us and that you would love us as your parents. Woe to him who quarrels with his maker. Will the clay ask the potter what he is making, or his handiwork say to him, that you have no skill? Woe unto him that says to his father, What are you begetting? Isaiah 45, verse 9 through 10. Fear of not being loved by human beings has led your creators to allow you to progress scientifically by yourselves, with almost no help. The emblem you see engraved on this machine and on my suit represents the truth. It is also the emblem of the Jewish people, the Star of David, which means, that which is above is like that which is below. And in its center is the swastika, which means that everything is cyclic, the top becoming the bottom, and the bottom in turn becoming the top. The origins and destiny of the creators and human beings are similar and linked. Do you not know? Have you not heard? Were you not told from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundation of the earth? Isaiah 40 verse 21. The traces of the Creator's bases on high mountains is mentioned in the book of Amos. He who marches over the heights of the earth. Amos 4 verse 13. The Creators had 7 bases in all. Those 7, they are the eyes of Yahweh, which run to and fro throughout the whole world. Zechariah 4 verse 10. This is the origin of the 7-branched candlestick, the meaning of which has been lost. In the beginning at the Creator's headquarters, there was a switchboard with 7 lighted switches, enabling them to stay in contact with other bases and with the interplanetary vessel orbiting the Earth. In Psalms 139 verse 4 through 6, there is an allusion to telepathy. Before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely. O Yahweh, you hem me in behind and before. You have laid your hand on me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain it. At that time, telepathy was unimaginable. Hence, such knowledge is too wonderful for me. Astronomy and interplanetary journeys were also unthinkable at the time. He numbers the stars one by one and calls each by name. Great is our Lord and great is his power. His understanding is infinite. Psalms 147, verse 4 through 5. Human beings were also unable to understand telecommunication. He sends his command to the end of the earth, and his word runs swiftly. Psalms 147, verse 15. We now reach a decisive turning point in the Creator's work. They decided at that period to let humanity progress scientifically without ever intervening directly. They understood that they themselves had been created in the same way, and that by creating similar beings to themselves, they were allowing the cycle to continue. But first, in order for the truth to be spread throughout the world, they decided to send a Messiah who would be able to communicate worldwide what the people of Israel were then the only ones to know. This was in preparation for the day when the original mystery would be explained in the light of scientific progress. That is to say, the revelation. So they announced him. But out of you, Bethlehem, shall come a governor for Israel, and whose roots are far back in the past in days gone by. He shall stand and be their shepherd in the strength of Yahweh. To the ends of the earth he shall be a man of peace. Micah 5, verse 2 through 5. Exult, daughters of Jerusalem. Here is your king coming forth to you, humble and carried on a mule. He will dictate peace to the nations. His empire will cover from sea to sea. Zechariah 9, verse 9 through 10.
Chapter 4. The Role of Christ. The Conception.
The next morning we met again at the same spot, and my host said, Christ's role was to spread the truth of the Bible scriptures throughout the world, so that they could serve as proof for all humanity when the age of science would finally explain everything. The creators therefore decided to arrange for a child to be born of a woman of the earth and one of their own people. The child in question would thereby inherit certain telepathic faculties, which humans lack. She was found with child of the Holy Ghost. Matthew 1, verse 18. Mary was the woman chosen, and obviously her fiancé found these tidings hard to accept. But, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared unto him. Matthew 1, verse 20. One of the creators appeared to explain that Mary would bring forth a son of God. The prophets who were in contact with the creators came from very far away to see the divine child. One of the spacecraft guided them. We observed the rising of his star, and we have come to pay him homage. And the star which they had seen at his rising went ahead of them, until it stopped above the place where the child lay. Matthew 2, verse 2 and 9. The creators watched over the child, and the angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph, saying, Arise and take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you, for Herod will seek the child to destroy him. Matthew 2, verse 13. The king was not too happy about the child king who had just been born on his territory, as the prophets had predicted. But after King Herod died, the creators told Joseph that he could return to Israel. When Herod was dead, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Arise and take the child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel. For those who sought the child's life are dead. Matthew 2, verse 19 through 20.
The Initiation.
When he came of age, Jesus was led to the creators so that they could reveal to him his true identity, introduce him to his Father, reveal his mission, and make known to him various scientific techniques. Heaven opened up, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove to alight upon him. And a voice from heaven was heard, saying, This is my Son, my beloved, on whom my favor rests. Jesus was then led away by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. Matthew 3, verse 16 through 17, and chapter 4, verse 1. The devil, Satan, the creator of whom we spoke previously, was always convinced that nothing good could come of humanity on earth. He was Satan the skeptic, and he was supported by the government's opposition on our distant planet. So, he tested Jesus to find out if his intelligence was positive, and if he really loved and respected his creators. Having discovered that they could place complete confidence in Jesus, Jesus was allowed to go and accomplish his mission. In order to rally people to him, Jesus performed miracles, which in reality were the application of scientific teachings shown to him by the creators. Sufferers from every kind of illness were all brought to him, and he cured them. Matthew 4 verse 24. Blessed be the poor in spirit. Matthew 5 verse 3. This sentence has been incorrectly interpreted as the poor are blessed, but the original meaning was that if the poor have spirit, then they will be happy, which is totally different. Then Jesus told his apostles that they must spread the truth throughout the world. In the prayer called the Lord's Prayer, or the Our Father, the truth is stated literally. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Matthew 6 verse 10. In heaven, on the Creator's planet, the scientists eventually became the ruling group and then created other intelligent beings. The same thing will happen on earth. The torch will be taken up again. This prayer, which has been repeated time and time again without anyone understanding its profound meaning, now takes on its full significance. On earth, as it is in heaven. Amongst other things, Jesus had been taught to speak convincingly through a type of telepathic group hypnosis. And it came to pass when Jesus had finished these words, that the crowds were astonished at his teachings, for he was teaching them as one having authority, and not as their scribes. Matthew 7 verse 28 through 29. He continued to heal the sick with the help of the creators who directed concentrated beams from a distance. A leper approached him. Jesus stretched out his hand, touched him and said, "Be clean again," and his leprosy was cured immediately. Matthew 8 verse 2 and 3. And he did the same for a man who was completely paralyzed. The operation was carried out from a distance using a concentrated ray, something like a laser, which burns only one spot through several layers. "Arise and walk," and he rose. Matthew 9 verse 6 through 8. Further on in St. Matthew's Gospel, Jesus announced his mission. "I did not come to invite virtuous people, but sinners." Matthew 9 verse 13. He did not come for the people of Israel, who knew of the existence of the creators, but rather so that this knowledge would be spread throughout the rest of the world. Later there were more miracles, somewhat similar to the first ones, all of which were medical. Nowadays there are transplants of hearts and other organs. Leprosy and other similar illnesses are cured, and people are brought out of a coma with appropriate care. These would be considered miracles by technologically primitive people. At that time, human beings were primitive and the creators were similar to people of your present civilized nations, although a little more advanced scientifically. Further on, we find an allusion to the creators, among whom is Jesus' real Father. "Whoever then will acknowledge me before men, I will acknowledge him before my Father who is in heaven." Matthew 10 verse 32. Before my Father who is in heaven. This says it all. In fact, God is not intangible or immaterial. He is in heaven. This is obviously incomprehensible to people who, at the time, believed that the stars were attached to a heavenly canopy, just like pretty light bulbs, all rotating around the center of the earth. Now, since the advent of space travel and an understanding of the immensity of the universe, the old texts are brought to light in a completely different way.
Parallel humanities.
In St. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 13, there is an important passage where Jesus explains in a parable how the creators left their planet to create life on other worlds. The sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the birds came and ate them up. And other seeds fell upon rocky ground, where they had not much earth, and when the sun rose they were scorched. Other seeds fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants, and other seeds fell upon good ground, and yielded fruit, some 100-fold, some 60-fold, and some 30-fold. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Matthew 13 verse 3 through 9. All this is an allusion to the various attempts to create life on other planets, and 3 of them failed. The first failed because of the birds, which came and ate the seeds. In fact, this was a failure caused by the proximity of the planet in question to the Creator's original planet. Those who are against the creation of people similar to themselves saw a possible threat in the experiment, and therefore went to destroy the creation. The second attempt was made on a planet too near a sun, which was too hot. Therefore the creation was destroyed by noxious radiations. The third attempt was made among the thorns, on a planet which was far too humid, where the plant life was so powerful that it destroyed the equilibrium and the animal world. This world, consisting only of plants, still exists. But the fourth attempt was finally successful on good ground. And it is important to note that there were in fact 3 successes in all. This means that on 2 other planets, which are relatively near to you, there are living beings similar to yourselves, who were created by the same creators. Here, they who have ears. Those who are able understand. When the time comes, those who seek to understand will do so. The others, those who look without really seeing, and hear without really listening or understanding, such people will never understand the truth. On the other hand, those who prove their intelligence by their own efforts, and thus show themselves to be worthy of their Creator's help, they will be helped. For the man who has will be given more till he has enough and to spare. But the man who has not will forfeit that which he has. Matthew 13 verse 12. The people who will not be able to prove their intelligence will not survive. Humans have almost proved that they are worthy of being recognized by their creators as their equals. They lack only a little love. Love for each other, and particularly for their creators. It is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 13 verse 11. The 3 planets on which life has been created have been set in competition against one another. The planet on which humanity makes the most scientific progress, thereby proving its intelligence, will receive the benefit of their Creator's inheritance on the day of the Last Judgment, so long as they do not behave aggressively towards their creators. This will be the day when their knowledge will have reached a sufficiently high level. At present, human beings on Earth are not very far away from that day. Human genius is the smallest of all seeds, but when it grows up it is larger than any herb and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and dwell in its branches. Matthew 13 verse 32. The birds of the air here refers to the creators who will come and lodge in the branches. That is to say, will come to give their knowledge to humanity when humanity shows itself worthy of it. The kingdom of heaven is like leaven, which a woman took and buried in 3 measures of flour, until all of it was leavened. Matthew 13 verse 33. This is another allusion to the 3 worlds in which the creators are waiting for science to bloom. I will utter things hidden since the foundation of the world. Matthew 13 verse 35. Here we have something fundamentally important. Planets have a lifespan. One day they will no longer be inhabitable. By that time, humanity must have reached a level of scientific knowledge sufficient either to undertake a move to another planet, or if it cannot adapt itself elsewhere, to create a humanoid form of life capable of surviving on another world. If the environment cannot be adapted to suit people, then people must be created who are compatible with the new environment. For example, before humanity becomes extinct, you would have to create another race of people capable of living in a totally different atmosphere, who would inherit your knowledge before you disappear. So that this inheritance would not be lost, the creators put life on 3 worlds, and only the best one will be entitled to the inheritance. So will it be at the end of the world. The angels will go out and separate the wicked from among the just. Matthew 13 verse 49. The passage concerning the multiplication of bread has already been explained. It refers to concentrated food products in the form of large pills, rather like those containing all the vital elements which your astronauts use. Your holy bread hosts are reminiscent of these pills. With the equivalent of a few loaves of bread, there is enough to feed thousands of people.
Scientific miracles.
When Jesus walked on the water, the creators supported him using an anti-gravity beam which cancelled the effects of weight at a precise point. He came to them walking upon the sea. Matthew 14 verse 25. The beam, in fact, created a turbulence which is described as follows. But seeing the wind strong, Peter was afraid, and when they got into the boat the wind fell. Matthew 14 verse 30 through 32. The wind ceased as they boarded the boat, because the beam was switched off when Jesus reached it. Another totally scientific miracle. In reality, there are no such things as miracles, only differences in levels of civilization. If you had landed at the time of Jesus in a spacecraft, or even a simple helicopter, even though your level of scientific development may have been limited, you would, in the eyes of the people of that time, have been performing miracles. Just by producing artificial light, coming from the sky, driving a car, watching television, or even by killing a bird with a gun, because they would have been incapable of understanding the mechanism behind such a phenomena. People of the time would have seen in them a divine or supernatural force. Also, do not forget that the same scientific gap which exists between you and the people at the time of Jesus also exists now between you and us. We can still do things which you would consider miracles. But for the most advanced individuals among you, they would no longer really be miracles, since for the last few decades you have taken the path of science and are trying to grasp the reason behind things instead of dumbly prostrating yourselves on your bellies and bringing offerings. Our knowledge, however, remains such that if we decided to perform a few miracles, even your most eminent scientists would be unable to understand how we did them. There are some particularly well-developed minds who would be able to cope with such things, but people in general would simply panic, and we are still capable of astonishing people, even though they are no longer easily shocked. It is necessary for people to understand that there is no ethereal God, but only people who created other people in their image. In chapter 17 of St. Matthew's Gospel, the creators appear once again. Jesus took Peter, James, and his brother John and led them up a high mountain by themselves, and was transfigured before them. And his face shone as the sun, and his raiment was white as the light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah, talking together with him. Behold, a voice out of the cloud said, "This is my beloved Son, hear him." Matthew 17, verse 1 through 5. This scene happens at night, and the apostles are all frightened to see Jesus illuminated by the powerful searchlights of the spacecraft, out of which Moses and Elijah stepped, still alive thanks to the tree of life from which they had benefited. Immortality is a scientific reality, even if it does not correspond to humanity's idea of immortality. In chapter 19, verse 30 of St. Matthew, there is a sentence, "But many who are first now will be last, and many who are last now will be first." This means that the created shall become creators, just as the creators were created.
Deserving the inheritance.
In chapter 25 of St. Matthew's Gospel, it is said that the 3 planets must make scientific progress, and they will be judged one day. We read in the parable, "For it is like a man going abroad, who called his servants and handed over his goods to them. And to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, and he went on his journey. And he who had received 5 talents went back and traded with them, and gained 5 more. In like manner, he who received the 2 talents gained 2 more. But he who had received the 1 returned only 1 talent. Take away the talent from him, and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him who does not have, even that which he seems to have shall be taken away." Matthew 25, verse 14 through 29. Out of the 3 worlds where life has been created, the one which makes the most progress will receive the inheritance. The ones which have not progressed will be dominated by the other and eliminated. This is also true on earth between nations. In St. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 26, Jesus reveals the importance of his death and of the writings which would later serve as proof. When one of his companions tried to defend him with a sword, he said, "Put back your sword into its place. Do you suppose that I cannot appeal to my Father, who would at once send to my aid more than 12 legions of angels? How then could the scriptures be fulfilled, which say that which must be?" Matthew 26, verse 52 through 54. It was in fact necessary for Jesus to die in order for the truth to be known throughout the world, so that later on, when your creators return to earth, they are not taken for usurpers or invaders. That is the purpose of the biblical and evangelical writings, to preserve traces of the work and presence of your creators, so that they will be recognized when they return. After his death, Jesus was resuscitated with the help of the creators. Suddenly there was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and drawing near rolled back the stone and sat upon it. His face shone like lightning, his garments were white as snow. Matthew 28, verse 2 through 3. The creators took care of Jesus and revived him, and he said, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you." Matthew 28, verse 19 through 20. Jesus' mission was coming to an end. So then the Lord, after he had spoken to them, was taken up into heaven. Mark 16 verse 19. The creators took him away after this last most important phrase. At the time of the end, if they shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. And they shall lay their hands upon the sick, and they shall get well. Mark 16 verse 18. This refers to humanity discovering anti-venom serums and antidotes and developing surgery and so on, as is happening now. In preparation for their arrival on Earth, the creators will appear more and more frequently in order to give more weight to their revelations. This also is happening right now. Look at the fig tree. When they put forth their buds, you know that summer is near. Luke 21 verses 29 through 30. When unidentified flying objects begin appearing in large numbers, as they are doing at present, it means that the time has come. In the Acts of the Apostles, it says furthermore in chapter 2, "And when the days of the Pentecost were drawing to a close, they were all together in one place. And suddenly there came a sound from heaven, as of a violent wind blowing, and it filled the whole house where they were sitting. And there appeared to them parted tongues as of fire, which settled upon each of them. They were all filled with the Holy Spirit, and began to speak in foreign tongues." Acts 2, verse 1 through 4. To make it possible for the apostles to spread the truth throughout the world, the creators exposed them to a concentrated burst of teaching, sent to them by amplified telepathic waves, a little like electroshocks, which impregnated their memories with elements of other languages. In the Acts of the Apostles, note the numerous appearances made by the creators, the angels, particularly when they liberated Peter, who had been chained up by Herod. "And behold, an angel of the Lord stood beside him, and the light shone in the room, and he struck Peter on the side and woke him, saying, 'Get up quickly.' The chains dropped, and the angel said to him, 'Gird thyself and put on thy sandals.' And he did so. And he said to him, 'Wrap thy cloak about thee and follow me.' And he followed him out, without knowing that what was being done by the angel was real, for he thought he was having a vision." Acts 12, verse 7 through 9. Peter, primitive as he was, thought he was having a vision as his chains fell off. He did not know about the electric laser welding torch which was being used by one of the creators. When such amazing things happen, people think they are dreaming. This is why it was often said that people who have seen the creators must have had a vision or seen them in a dream. In the same way, it is said that people who have seen our flying saucers must have had hallucinations. In that quotation, it is clearly explained that Peter thought he had seen everything in a dream, but in fact it was all very real. "And they came to the iron gate that leads into the city, and this opened to them of its own accord. And straightway the angel left him." Acts 12, verse 10. Another sign that the time has come is that the people of Israel have regained their country. "And after these things I will return and will rebuild the tabernacle of David, which has fallen down." Acts 15, verse 16. Another important sentence is found in Acts 17:29, namely, "For we are also his offspring." This was said by an apostle while speaking of God. We shall not continue to read further in the Gospels, where there are many more references to the creators, because they are less important. You can interpret them yourself for those who ask questions in the light of the explanations I've already given you. And saying that, he left, just as on previous occasions.
Chapter 5. The End of the World. 1946. First year of the new era.
The next day he returned, just as before, and started to speak. The time of the end of the world has arrived. Not the end of the world as in a catastrophe destroying the earth, but the end of the world of the church, which has completed its work. It performed its role more or less effectively. It was a task of vulgarization, making it possible for your creators to be recognized when they return. As you have noticed, the Christian church is dying. It is the end of this world because its mission has been fulfilled, albeit with quite a few mistakes, because it tried for so long to deify the creators. This deification was acceptable until the scientific age began. Then it should have been removed completely. This would have been possible had the truth been preserved, or if people had been able to read between the lines. But too many mistakes were made. This was foreseen by the creators, and the church will collapse because it is no longer of any use. In scientifically developed countries, people are already consumed by a kind of moroseness because they have nothing left to believe in. Nobody can believe in a heavenly God any longer, perched upon a cloud with a white beard, omniscient and omnipotent, which is what the church wants us to do. Neither can anybody believe in delightful little guardian angels, nor in a devil with horns and hooves, so nobody knows what to believe in anymore. Only a few young people have understood that love is essential. You have reached the golden age. People of the earth, you fly in the heavens and your voices are carried to the four corners of the earth by means of radio waves. So the time has come for you to know the truth. As it has been foretold, everything is happening now that the earth has entered the age of Aquarius. Certain people have already written about this, but no one believed them. Some 22,000 years ago, your creators decided to start their work on earth, and everything that has happened since was anticipated because the movement of the galaxy implies this knowledge. The age of Pisces was the age of Christ and his fishermen, and the age of Aquarius, which follows, began in 1946. This is the era in which the people of Israel found their country again. And there shall be in that day the noise of a cry from the Pisces gate. Zephaniah 1, verse 10. The gate of Pisces is the passageway into the age of Aquarius. This is the moment where the sun rises over the earth on the day of the vernal equinox, in the constellation of Aquarius. The loud clamour is the sound accompanying this revelation. It is not by chance that you were born in 1946.
The end of the church.
This revelation, thanks to the enlightenment it contains, will bring new hope to people who are morose, but it will also hasten the fall of the church, unless the church can understand its mistakes and places itself at the service of the truth. For the terrible one is brought to naught, and the scorner is consumed, and all the watchers for iniquity are cut off. Those who by their words make man an offender, and lay a snare for him that reproveth in the gate, and turn aside the just for the thing of naught. Isaiah 29, verse 20 through 21. It is the end of those people who want to make us believe in original sin, and who want to make us feel guilty. The end for people who lay traps for those who spread the truth at the end of the age of Pisces and the beginning of the age of Aquarius. The end of people who are trying to save the church as it existed, while ousting the just, those who speak of justice, and those who write or preach the truth. They are like the people who crucified Jesus. Such people were convinced that they were defending what was right, without trying to understand, and were frightened of being ruined and destroyed at the dawning of the age of Pisces. The eyes of them that see shall not be dim, and the ears of them that hear shall hearken diligently. The fool shall no more be called prince, neither shall a deceitful be called great. For the fool will speak foolish things, and his heart will work iniquity, to practice hypocrisy, and speak of Yahweh deceitfully, and to make empty the soul of the hungry, and take away drink from the thirsty. The villain's ways are villainous, and he devises infamous plans to ruin the poor with his lies, and deny justice to the needy. But the man of noble mind forms noble designs, and stands firm in his nobility. Isaiah 32, verse 3 through 8. Everyone in this case will understand the words, "The eyes of them that see shall not be dim." It is the church who speaks of Yahweh deceitfully, and leaves empty the souls of those who are hungry for the truth. It is the church which devises infamous plans to ruin the poor, so that those who are unable to understand, or who dare not understand, will remain faithful to it through the fear of sin, excommunication, or other such nonsensical things. While the poor try to plead their case, those who lack the intelligence to seize the truth stand up for the lies of the church at the church's bidding. But those of noble mind, those who loudly proclaim the truth, they perform noble acts even though they may live without the approval of the organized church. Do you not know? Have you not heard? Were you not told long ago? Have you not perceived ever since the world began? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? Isaiah 40, verse 21. Here is my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom I delight. I have bestowed my spirit upon him, and he will make justice shine on the nations. Isaiah 42, verse 1. You are the one who will spread the truth throughout the world. This truth which has been revealed to you over the past few days. He will not break a bruised reed, or snuff out a smouldering wick. Isaiah 42 verse 3. You will not be able to destroy the church and its lies completely, but eventually it will fade out by itself. This extinction has been going on for some time. The wick is weakening. It has accomplished its mission, and it is time for it to disappear. It has made mistakes and has enriched itself at the expense of the truth, without trying to interpret it in a clear enough way for the people of this era. But do not be too hard on it, for it has spread throughout the world the word of the Bible, which is a witness to the truth. Its mistakes have been great, particularly when it injected too much of the supernatural into the truth, and wrongly translated the scriptures in ordinary Bibles. It replaced the term Elohim, which refers to the creators, with a singular term, God, whereas in fact Elohim in Hebrew is the plural of Eloha. In this way the church transformed the creators into a single incomprehensible God. Another mistake was to make people adore a wooden cross in memory of Jesus Christ. A cross is not the Christ. A piece of wood in the shape of a cross means nothing. Such a man will not use reason. He has neither the wit nor the sense to say, half of it I have burnt, yes, and use its embers to bake bread. I have roasted meat on them too and eaten it, but the rest of it I turn into this abominable thing, and so I am worshipping a log of wood. Isaiah 44 verse 19.
The creation of the state of Israel.
The return of the Jewish people to Israel, as it was predicted, is a sign of the golden age. I will bring your children from the east and gather you all from the west. I will say to the north, give them up, and to the south, do not hold them back. Bring my sons and daughters from afar, bring them from the ends of the earth. Bring everyone who is called by my name, all of whom I have created, whom I have formed, all of whom I have made for my glory. Isaiah 43 verse 5 through 7. This is indeed the creation of the state of Israel, welcoming Jews from the north and from the south. The Bible preserved by the Jewish people bears witness to the coming of the creators, as is written in Isaiah chapter 43 verse 10. You are my witnesses. Lead out those who have eyes but are blind, who have ears but are deaf. Let all the nations be gathered together and the people assembled. Which of them proclaimed to us the former things and foretold this? Let them bring in their witnesses to prove that they were right, so that others may hear and say, It is true, you are my witnesses, saith Yahweh, and my servant whom I have chosen. That you may know and believe me, and understand that I am He. You are my witnesses, declares the Lord, that I am God, yes, and from the ancient days I am one and the same. Isaiah 43 verse 8 through 13. You are my witnesses. That is quite explicit, isn't it? And I can tell you again on this day, from ancient days I am one and the same, thanks to the witness that you hold in your hand, the Bible. For a small moment I have forsaken thee, but with great mercies I will gather thee. Isaiah 54 verse 7. The Jewish people have, in fact, regained their country after having participated in safeguarding the truth. The time when humanity will cure illness by scientific means is predicted. There shall be no more thence an infant of days, nor an old man that hath not filled his days. Isaiah 65 verse 20. Medicine helps people triumph over illness, and especially over infant mortality. In the lips of him that hath understanding, wisdom is found, but a rod is for the back of him that is void of heart. Proverbs 10 verse 13.
The mistakes of the church.
The church was wrong in making human beings feel guilty and making them pray without seeking to understand. Because it is written in the Gospels, When you pray, use not vain repetitions as the heathens do, for they think that they shall be heard for their much speaking. Matthew 6 verse 7. And despite the warning in the Gospels, the church has also made itself too wealthy. Lay not up for yourselves treasures on earth. No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and Mammon. Matthew 6 verse 19 through 24. Elsewhere it says, Provide neither gold nor silver, nor brass in your purses, nor scrip for your journey, neither two coats, neither shoes, nor yet staves. Matthew 10 verse 9 through 19. But with their stupid rules and meatless Fridays, they were not obeying their own gospels. Not that which goeth into the mouth defileth a man, but that which cometh out of the mouth, this defileth a man. Matthew 15 verse 11. How dare they, these men who are only men, indulge themselves in the wealth and luxury of the Vatican, when the Gospels tell them to possess neither gold nor silver, not even a spare coat? How dare they preach goodness? Then Jesus said unto his disciples, Verily I say unto you, that a rich man shall hardly enter into the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 19 verse 23. They make up heavy packs and pile them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. But all their works they do for to be seen of men, and love the uppermost room at feasts, and greetings in the markets. For you have one master, and you are all brothers. Do not call any man on earth Father, for you have one Father, and he is in heaven. Nor must you be called teacher. You have one teacher, the Christ. But the greatest among you must be your servant. Matthew 23 verse 4 through 11. That is all written in their own gospel. So how dare the church burden people with their so-called sins, which are only different concepts of morality and lifestyles? How dare they speak of goodness while living in opulence in the Vatican, when people are dying of hunger? How dare they seek invitations and honours while preaching humility? How dare they ask people to call them Father, Your Eminence, or Your Holiness, when the Gospels expressly forbid all these things? If tomorrow the Pope took to the road as a pauper, the Church would be revived, but it would have a totally different humanitarian goal to that which it has pursued up to now, namely the propagation of what must serve as proof for today. That mission is finished, but the Church could reorientate itself towards goodness by helping those who are unhappy, by helping to spread the real truth of those writings, which until now have been distorted or kept secret. In this way, the generous spirit of many priests would find fulfillment. For that to happen, the men of the Vatican should set an example by selling all their treasures to help finance underdeveloped countries. They should go to those countries and help people progress by offering practical help with their bare hands, not just with a good word. It is unacceptable too that there are different categories of marriage and more particularly of burials according to a person's wealth. This is another mistake of the Church. But the time has come.
At the root of all religions.
It is not only in the Bible and the Gospels that there are traces of the truth. Testimonies can be found in practically every religion. The Kabbalah especially is one of the richest in testimonies, but it would not have been easy for you to get hold of one. If one day you can find a copy, then you will be able to see that there are a great number of allusions to us. Particularly noteworthy is a description in the Canticle of Canticles 5 of the Creator's planet and the distance which separates it from Earth. It is written that the height of the Creator is 236,000 parasangs, and that the height of his heels is 30 million parasangs. The parasang is a unit of measurement just like the parsec, which stands for the distance that light can travel in 1 second, which is about 300,000 kilometers. Our planet is 30 million parasangs away from Earth, or about 9,000 billion kilometers, just a little less than a light year. By moving at the speed of light, or 300,000 kilometers per second, you would take almost 1 year to reach our planet. With your present-day rockets, which travel at only 40,000 kilometers per hour, it would take you about 26,000 years to reach our planet. So you can see that we have nothing to fear for the time being. We have long since been able to travel to Earth from our planet in less than 2 months with an atom-based propulsion method, which enables us to move at the speed of rays that are 7 times faster than the speed of light. Those rays carry us. To be carried by them, we leave the optical window, which is the spectrum of rays detected by the eye, to tune in to the carrying beam. That is why people on Earth who have observed our spaceships have described them as becoming luminous, then very brilliant white, then blue, and finally disappearing. Obviously, when a spacecraft goes beyond the speed of light, it disappears and is no longer visible to the naked eye. That is the height of the Creator's heels. The distance at which his heels, so to speak, rest on a planet. The Creator's own planet is 236,000 parasangs from its sun. a very big star, or 70,800,000,000 kilometers. This is what is meant by the height of the creators. The Kabbalah is the closest book to the truth, but almost all religious books allude to us with varying degrees of clarity. This is especially true in those countries where the creators had their bases. In the Andes, in the Himalayas, in Greece where Greek mythology also contains important testimonies, as well as in the Buddhist and Islamic religions and among the Mormons. It would take many pages to name all the religions and sects that testify in a more or less obscure way to our work.
Mankind, a disease of the universe.
There, now you know the truth. You must write it down and make it known throughout the world. If people on earth want us to give them the benefit of our experience and help them gain 25,000 years of scientific knowledge, they have to show us that they want to meet us and above all demonstrate that they deserve it, so that all this can be done without any danger to us. If we give our knowledge to humanity, we have to be sure they will make good use of it. Our observations in recent years have not shown that wisdom rules the earth. Certainly there has been progress, but some people still die of hunger, and a warlike spirit still exists throughout the world. We know that our arrival could improve many things and unite nations, but we have to feel that people really want to see us, and that they are truly ready to be unified. We also have to feel that they really want to see us arrive, knowing fully who we are and understanding the true meaning of our arrival. Several times human warplanes have tried to chase our craft, taking us for enemies. You must tell them who we are, so that we can show ourselves without any risk of either getting hurt or killed, which is not the case at present, or of creating a dangerous and murderous panic. Some researchers want to contact us by radio, but we do not respond, because in this way they could locate our planet. On the other hand, transmission times would be too long, and our broadcasting system uses waves that your technology cannot pick up, because you have not yet discovered them. They are 7 times faster than radio waves, and we are experimenting with new waves that are 1.5 times faster than that. Progress continues, and our own research continues for the purpose of understanding and relating to the large being of whom we are a part, and on whose atoms we are parasites. These atoms are the planets and the stars. In fact, we have been able to discover intelligent living beings in the infinitely small, who live on particles that are planets and suns to them. They ask the same questions as ourselves. Humanity is a disease inside this gigantic being, and the planets and stars are its atoms. Also, this same gigantic being is in its turn a parasite on other greater atoms. In both directions, infinity exists. But the important thing is to make sure that the disease, which is humanity, continues to exist and never dies. We did not know when we were creating you that we were accomplishing a secondary mission written into us, thus repeating what had been done for us. From what we created and how it has developed, we have discovered our own origins, for we were also created by other people who have since disappeared. Their world has quite certainly disintegrated, but thanks to them, we were able to continue in their steps and create you. We may disappear one day, but by then you will have replaced us and taken over our roles. So you are the next link in the precious chain of human continuity. Other worlds exist, and humanity is certainly developing in other parts of the universe. But in this region of the universe, our world is the only one to have made new creations. This is important because each world needs to bring forth the innumerable children who are vital for preserving continuity. This allows us to hope that one day humanity will no longer be in danger of disappearing completely. We are not sure that humankind can ever stabilize itself in abundance. The chain has always continued. But we must not upset the equilibrium of the immense body in which we are a parasite, because we could trigger a catastrophe, which at best might bring about a recession, and at worst, cause complete destruction. In a healthy body, a few germs can live without danger, but if they develop too much, they cause a disease which troubles the organism. Then the organism reacts to destroy the germs responsible, either naturally or with the help of medication. The important thing, apparently, is to create enough worlds so that humanity does not extinguish itself. Then, above all else, to make sure that the equilibrium is not broken by concentrating our efforts anew on seeking to make those who exist happier. It is in this area that we can help you tremendously.
Evolution, a myth.
First of all, you must dispel from your minds all uncertainty about evolution. Your scientists who have elaborated theories of evolution are not completely wrong in saying that humanity is descended from the monkey and the monkey from the fish and so on. In truth, the first living organism created on Earth was unicellular, which then gave rise to more complex life forms. But this did not happen by chance. When we came to Earth to create life, we started by making very simple creations, and then improved our techniques of environmental adaptation. This enabled us to make in turn fish, amphibians, mammals, birds, primates, and finally man himself, who is just an improved model of the monkey, to which we added what makes us essentially human. In this way, we made human beings in our image, as it is written in the Bible in Genesis. You could have realized for yourself that there is little chance of a series of accidents producing such a large variety of life forms, the colors of birds, and their elaborate mating rituals, or the shape of certain antelope horns. What natural need could lead antelopes or wild goats to develop curled horns, or birds to have blue or red feathers? And what about exotic fish? All that is the work of our artists. Do not forget the artists when you yourselves create life. Imagine a world without them. No music, films, paintings or sculptures. Life would be very boring, and animals very ugly if their bodies corresponded only to their needs and functions. Evolution of the various forms of life on Earth is really the evolution of techniques of creation and the increased sophistication of the Creator's work. This eventually led them to create people similar to themselves. You can find the skulls of prehistoric men who were the first human prototypes. These were replaced each time by others more evolved. This continued right up to your present form, which is the exact replica of your creators, who were afraid to create anything superior to themselves, although some were tempted to do so. If we could be sure that human beings would never turn against their creators to dominate or destroy them, as has happened between the different human races created successively on Earth, but instead would love them as parents, the temptation would be great to create an improved humankind. This is possible, but at what enormous risk. In fact, some creators worry that the people of the earth may be slightly superior to their parents. Satan is one of those who has always thought, and still does, that the people of the earth are a danger to our planet because they are a little too intelligent. But the majority among us thinks that you will prove to us that you love us and that you will never try to destroy us. That is the least we expect before coming to help you. It is even possible that at each creation of humankind by humankind, a small improvement is achieved, a true evolution of the human race, which is gradual so that the creators do not feel threatened when faced with their creations. This makes it possible to speed up progress. Although we do not think that at present we can give you our scientific heritage, we do feel it is safe to give you our political and humanitarian knowledge. This will not threaten your planet, but will allow you to be happier on Earth. Thanks to this happiness, you will progress faster, and that could also help you to show us more speedily that you deserve our help and our inheritance in striving to achieve an intergalactic level of civilization. Otherwise, if humanity cannot calm its aggressiveness, if peace does not become your only goal, and you allow people to promote war, produce arms, test nuclear weapons, and maintain armies just to seize or retain power, then we will stop such people from becoming a danger to us, and there would be another Sodom and Gomorrah. How could we not fear people from Earth when they attack their own kind, we who are from another world and slightly different? You, Claude Variant, you will spread the truth under your present name, which you will replace progressively with Rael. The literal meaning of Rael can also be simply translated as messenger. Furthermore, it is through telepathy that we made you call your son Ramuel, which means the son of the one who brings light, because he is truly the son of our messenger, of our ambassador. And following that pronouncement he left, just as he had done on other mornings.
Chapter 6. The New Commandments. Geniocracy.
I met him the next day, and again he began to speak. First of all, let us look at the political and economic aspects of life. What kind of people allows humanity to progress? The geniuses. Therefore, your world must appreciate its geniuses and allow them to govern the earth. First of all, Power was in the hands of brutes, who were superior to others because of their muscular strength. Next in power were the rich, who used their money to employ many brutes in their service. Then came the politicians, who ensnared the people of democratic countries with their own hopes, not to mention military men, whose success has been based around the rational organization of brutality. The only types of people you have never placed in power are the ones who help humanity to progress, whether they discovered the wheel, gunpowder, or the internal combustion engine, or the atom. The geniuses have always allowed less intelligent people in power to benefit from their inventions. Often such people have used peaceful inventions for murderous ends. All that must be changed. For this to happen, you must abolish all your electoral and polling systems, because in their present form they are completely unsuited to human development. Each person is a useful cell in this huge body we call humanity. The cell in your foot should not decide whether or not your hand should pick up a given object. It is the brain which must decide, and if the object in question is good, the cell of your foot will benefit from it. It is not up to the foot to vote. Its job is simply to transport the body, including the brain, and it is not capable of judging if what the hand takes is good or not. Votes only have a positive effect when there is an equivalence of knowledge and intellect. Copernicus was condemned by a majority of incompetent people because he was the only one at the time who had a sufficiently high level of comprehension. Although the church, that is to say the majority, believed the earth was the centre of the universe, this turned out to be wrong. The earth really revolved around the sun, and Copernicus, the minority, turned out to be right. When the first cars were invented, if we had asked everyone to vote to establish whether cars should be allowed to exist or not, the majority, who knew nothing about cars and did not care, would have responded negatively, and you would still be riding in a horse and cart. So how can you change all that? These days, you have psychologists who are capable of creating tests to evaluate the intelligence and aptitude of every individual. These tests should be applied systematically from infancy onwards in order to define each individual's orientation towards subjects studied. When individuals reach a responsible age, their intellectual coefficient can be measured and included on their identity or voter's card. Only those with an intellectual capacity of at least 50% above the average should be eligible for a public post. To vote, individuals would need an intellectual coefficient of at least 10% above average. If such a system existed now, many of your present politicians would not hold the positions they do today. This is a totally democratic system. There are many engineers, for example, who are of lower than average intelligence, but who have very good memories and have obtained several academic degrees because of this. On the other hand, there are many labourers or farm workers who have no specialised education at all, but whose intelligence is 50% above the average. What is totally unacceptable now is that the voice of someone whom you might vulgarly call a cretin is worth as much as that of a genius who has thought maturely about the way he or she is going to vote. In some small cities, elections are won by the candidate who buys people the most drinks, not by the individual whose policies are the most interesting. Therefore, right from the start, the right to vote should be reserved for those people whose brains are more suited to thinking and finding solutions to problems. That is to say, an elite group of high intelligence. This does not necessarily mean those people who have done the most studying. We are talking about placing the genius in power, and you may call that geniocracy.
Humanitarianism.
Second point. Your world is paralysed by profit, and communism has failed to provide a carrot big enough to motivate people and encourage them to make progress. You are all born equal, and this is also written in the Bible. Your government should ensure that people are born with approximately the same level of financial means. It is unacceptable that unintelligent children should live in luxury, thanks to the fortunes amassed by their parents, while geniuses die of hunger and do any menial chore just to eat. This way, they forsake occupations where they could have made discoveries benefiting the whole of humanity. To avoid this, property ownership must be abolished without establishing communism. This world is not yours. That also is written in the Bible. You are only tenants. Thus, all goods should be rented for 49 years. This will eliminate the injustice of inheritance. Your true inheritance, and that of your children, is the whole world, if only you knew how to organize yourselves to make it pleasant. This political orientation of humanity is not communism. Its preoccupation is the future of humanity. If you want to give it a name, call it humanitarianism. Take, for example, a man who has finished his studies at the age of 21 and wants to work. He chooses his profession and earns a salary. If he wants to find a place to live while his parents are still alive, he buys a house. But of course, in reality, he is renting a house or apartment for 49 years from the state which constructed it. If the value of the house is estimated at 100,000 francs, he can pay that amount divided into monthly installments for 49 years. At the age of 70, 21 plus 49, he will have paid for his house and can live there until his death without ever paying again. After his death, the house will go back to the state, which must then allow his children, if there are any, to benefit from it freely. Supposing there is one child, then this child can live freely all his life in his father's house. At his death, his child in turn can also benefit from the family house and so on indefinitely. Inheritance must be completely abolished except for the family house. This does not, however, prevent each person being rewarded individually for their merits. Let us take another example. Someone has 2 children. One is a good worker and the other is lazy. At the age of 21, they both decide to go their own separate ways. They each rent a house worth 100,000 francs. The worker will rapidly earn more money than the lazy one. He will then be able to rent a house worth twice as much as the first one. If he has the means, he will even be able to rent both houses, one as a country house. If his savings are fruitful, he will also be able to build a house and rent it for 49 years, thereby receiving money due to him. But at his death, everything will go back to the community, except for the family home, which will go to the children. Thus, individuals can make a fortune for themselves depending on their own merits, but not for their children. To each their own merits. The same should apply to commercial and industrial enterprises. If someone creates a business, it is theirs for their entire life, and they can rent it out, but never for more than 49 years. The same goes for farmers. They can rent land and cultivate it for 49 years, but after that it all goes back to the state, which will be able to rent it out again for another 49 years. Their children can also rent it for 49 years. This method must be adopted for all goods that remain exploitable. And as for the value of things, nothing changes. Everything that is of value, such as shares, gold, enterprises, cash, or buildings, are all owned by the community, but may be rented for 49 years by those who have acquired the means by their own merits and labour. In this way, somebody who made a fortune around the age of 40 will be able to construct houses, rent them as apartments for 49 years, and enjoy that money so long as life lasts. Afterwards, the money, which comes from these rents, will go back to the community. This humanitarianism is already prescribed in the Bible. You shall count 7 Sabbaths of years. That is 7 times 7 years, 49 years. Leviticus 25 verse 8. When you sell or buy land amongst yourselves, neither party shall drive a hard bargain. You shall pay your fellow countryman according to the number of years since the Jubilee, and he shall sell to you according to the number of annual crops. The more years that there are to run, the higher the price. The fewer the years, the lower the price, because he is selling you a series of crops. Leviticus 25, verses 14 through 16. No land shall be sold outright, because the land is mine, and you are coming into it as aliens and settlers. Leviticus 25, verse 23. If geniuses are admitted to power, they will understand the usefulness of these reforms. You must also see to it that all the nations of the earth unite to form only one government.
World government.
The creation of a new worldwide currency and a common language would help you to establish a world government. The Auvergne dialect is no longer spoken in Clermont-Ferrand, and very soon French will no longer be spoken in Paris, nor English in London, nor German in Frankfurt. Your scientists and linguists should unite and create a new language in all the schools of the world. The same must be done with money. Worldwide currency values cannot be based on the franc, the dollar, or the yen, but must be based on a new currency created for the needs of the whole earth, so that people are not offended and forced to ask why another currency has been chosen instead of their own. Finally, the trigger required to bring about such a union is the suppression of military conscription, which teaches only aggressiveness to young men. Professional armies must then be assigned to protect public order. This must happen at the same time in all countries, so as to provide an indispensable guarantee of security.